Hi guys, welcome and welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are well and I hope you guys are safe. In this video, I teach you guys how to make a tulip skirt, and if that's something that you're interested in, definitely keep watching. Last week, I ran a poll and I asked people if they were interested in seeing this skirt, and a lot of people said yes, so here it is. I'm recreating it now. If you're new here, welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. You guys know how much I love you. Before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell and the share button so that other people can benefit from this video. Thank you guys and enjoy the video. To proceed with your tulip skirt, you need your skirt pattern. As you can see, I've gone ahead to draft my skirt pattern. If you don't know how to draft your skirt pattern, please check out the video in the iCards above where I show you how to draft a skirt pattern. Once you're finished with your skirt pattern, we're going to be doubling the front bit of the skirt pattern. Basically, we're going to be acting like we want to cut out our skirt pattern, the front piece, on the fabric. However, we'll be cutting out on paper for now. So you want to take your piece of paper or your pattern paper, you want to fold it into two so that it's doubled, and then you want to have the center or the folded area really straight. Next, you want to place your pattern piece, your front pattern piece on it, and then you want to make sure that the center front aligns with the folded edge of your folded pattern paper. Go ahead and pin your pattern piece in place. After thoroughly pinning your pattern piece in place, go ahead and cut it out using your paper scissors. And after cutting out, you want to make sure that you mark your dart points. Because my parting paper was a bit see-through, it was easier for me to see my dart points. However, usually what I'll do is like put a pin at the apex and then, kind of trace it out on the other side. But like I said, because this pattern paper is a bit transparent, I was able to see it. And then at the top, I literally just, create a small notch and then I just trace it out. That's how I transfer my darts. So go ahead and transfer your darts. And after doing that, you want to unpin the pattern paper from the double pattern paper now. And then you want to go ahead and trace out your dart, which is what I'm doing. If you like a link on how I on where I bought my pattern paper from, check out the links in the description bar. I've just included it. Next, you want to label your pattern appropriately, so go ahead and label center front, side front, the name of the person, as well as the grain. So the fabric grain is a different topic and I'll cover it in another video if you guys want me to. Let me know in the comment section. This next bit is absolutely important, guys, because it can literally make or mess up your tulip skirt. You want to go ahead and literally draw out the curve that you want on your tulip skirt. So again, in the actual picture that I wanted to recreate, it was a slant, but for me, I did more of like a curved tulip. It's absolutely up to you, whatever you want to do. However, the first thing that I think you should mark is how high you want your tulip skirt to go. And as you can see, I measured about 6 or 7 inches starting from the hem, and for me that was the maximum height that my tulip skirt could get to. You know what, guys, it was absolutely really high. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but it was really like it was a bit too much, a bit of skin. So I would recommend that you probably set it at about 3 or 4 inches as the highest you want your tulip skirt to go. It doesn't look like that much, but once you wear it, it's actually, a bit more revealing. Like I mentioned earlier, if you wanted your tulip skirt a bit more slant, so go ahead and draw a slant line from, close to the very tip, as you can see, across your height that you want all the way to the hem. And if you wanted it a bit more curved, you can, go ahead and draw a curve freehand. I went with the freehand curve later, but obviously I'm just showing the options. But like I said, guys, remember that it's important that your skirt is not too high. Very important, because again, like I said, mine ended up being a bit too high. But yeah, I mean, it's still cute, but it just ended up being a bit too high. Alright guys, if you're a bit conservative, don't cut out as much as this. As you will see from my thumbnail, that even this might be too much for some people. For me, it was okay, but if you're a bit conservative, I'll say that cut out less than what I'm cutting out. Go ahead and cut out your desired style or desired pattern. As you can see, I went ahead to cut out the curved part, and then we're going to be getting rid of the other part because I don't need it. This is the actual part that we need. So the next thing to do is to get into the business and start cutting. For this, you need your measuring tape, your cutting scissors, and paper scissors. You need a zipper. I'm using a black zipper because I couldn't find a purple one. You need your rotary cutter. You need your thread. You need your lining. You'll need your fabric, and of course you'll need your pattern that we just finished working with. So for your pattern, you'll need the one that we've kind of cut out to give the tulip, and also your back pattern piece. You need some pins, you need your pin cushion, and guys, you'll be ready to rock and roll. To start off, get your fabric. I think I ended up using about 1.5 yards of fabric, and I don't even think I used it all. Fold your fabric into two so that the wrong sides are against the table and facing you. So essentially the right sides are facing each other on the inside, while the wrong side is leaning against the table and one wrong side is also facing you. So as you can see, I folded my fabric into two, and then you want to go ahead and place the front piece on it. We'll be cutting 2 pieces of this front piece, so you want to go ahead and place it on the fabric, make sure that it's all smooth, and then you want to pin it into place. Now after doing that, you want to go ahead and lengthen it. So remember that the skirt that we're creating is a midi skirt, so go ahead and add your desired length. For me, I didn't want it too long, but I went with an extra 8 inches, including my sewing allowance. Then go ahead and mark out your sewing allowances on all sides. For the side, I used a sewing allowance of 1 inch. At the top where we have the waist, I used a sewing allowance of 1/2 inch, and on the side where we have the tulip design, I used a sewing allowance of 1/2 inch. So go ahead and mark out all your sewing allowances appropriately and then cut it out as shown. After cutting out the front piece, it should look like that. The next thing you want to do is you want to cut out the back piece. To cut out the back piece, the same process applies. You want to go ahead and pin your black pattern onto your fabric while you have your fabric folded into two, and then you want to mark the same allowance that you marked for the height, which was 8 inches in my case. You want to mark it for the back piece, and then you want to go ahead and mark out all your normal sewing allowances. So for the back piece, at the center back, I added 1 inch. That's for the zip allowance. At the side seam, I added 1 inch, which is what I did for the front, and then at the waist, I added 1/2 inch, which is what I did for the front. So go ahead and mark out all your sewing allowances and cut out your back piece as well. Now that both the back and front pieces have been cut out, the next thing to do is to cut out the lining. So basically, to cut out the lining, you'll be cutting out the exact same way that you cut out the main fabric. That is, you want to fold your lining into two, and then you want to go ahead and pin your fabric and pattern template onto your lining the exact way it is. So don't unpin it, just pin it exactly. Now, one interesting thing that I did for the lining is to make sure that your lining is 1.5 inches shorter than the fabric. And to do this, the way I do it, or the method I recommend, is on your fabric, go ahead and measure 1.5 inches at the hem and then fold it in, which is what I did here, and then pin it onto the lining that way. Carefully cut it so you don't mistakenly cut out, your fabric while you're cutting, and then go ahead and, cut out the lining using that as a template. So you will notice that my lining is 1.5 inches shorter than my fabric, and this is important so that it can take it in, but yeah, we'll get there. Repeat the same process for the back lining. You want to make sure it's also 1.5 inches shorter than the main fabric. Now that all pieces have been cut out, including the fabric and lining, the next thing to do is to mark out your dart. To mark out the dart, I tend to snip the dart edges just a little bit. So I snip each dart edge and then I create a notch at the center front, which is basically just cutting a small V. Next, I place a pin into the dart apex and I go ahead and mark out where the pin is. So I do this on the lining, on both sides of the lining, and then I do this on both sides of the main fabric. After doing that, go ahead and unpin your fabric, and if it helps, you want to create an X, you want to draw an X on the wrong side of each fabric. We're going to start sewing on the main fabric, and to do that, you want to separate the main fabric from the lining piece. So you place your main fabric, and then starting from the notch point, which indicates that that's the center back, you want to mark 8.5 or 9 inches, whatever works for you. And from that point, you want to mark 1 inch all the way to the hem. Now for this skirt, there will be no slits because it's a tulip skirt. So starting from your 9 inches mark, you want to go ahead and sew all the way on 1 inch. That will be the zip allowance, closing up the entire space. After sewing, that's what it looks like. So as you can see, we left about 9 inches open, which is for the zip allowance. The next thing you want to do is that you want to sort out your dart, and to sort out your dart, I tend to fold it into two so that the two dart legs meet, or where you've notched meet, and then I go ahead and just sew a slant towards the apex. So I'm going to try and illustrate it. I just folded it into two here so that the two dart legs meet, and then I went ahead to pin it in place so that it's not moving, and then I used a ruler to draw like a line from the dart leg to the apex. Again, I usually don't do this when I'm sewing, but I'm just showing you guys how to go about it. I tend to just fold it and sew. Now after sewing the darts, this is what it looks like. You want to go ahead and repeat all of these processes on the lining as well. So you want to close up the bottom of the lining, that's from the zip area all the way to the hem, and then you want to sew the darts in place. This is what it should look like. Next, we're going to be closing up the hem. Go ahead and place your lining on top of your fabric so that the right sides are facing each other. Started at the center back seam, you want to open up your seam so that they match, and then pin it in place at the hem. Pin it all the way from the center to the sides, and then go ahead and sew it on 1/2 inch sewing allowance. After sewing, this is what it looks like after sewing and ironing, and as you can see, the lining pulls a bit of the fabric inward, and this is like the nice finishing that we're going for. It kind of gives like a suit finishing where, you know, your fabric is showing on the inside as well, and I think it's really professional. So next we're going to move to the front piece, and for the front piece as well, you want to go ahead and mark the dart. So again, in similar fashion, you want to go ahead and notch the dart legs, and then you want to go ahead and pass like a pin through the apex so that you can mark the dart apex where necessary. So as you can see, my pin came off, but that would happen sometimes. Just go ahead and slip it right back and check that you're on track, and go ahead and mark the apex. After marking the darts, the next thing to do is go ahead and sew the darts in place. But before sewing the darts, I tend to pin my pieces together. So I went ahead to, take the two fabrics together, and I pinned it together, and I also pinned the lining pieces together. That's because I would like to have both pieces intact and not looking for any piece. So like I said, go ahead and sew the dart, and if it helps, you can mark the wrong sides of both your lining pieces and your fabric pieces. After sewing the dart on all 4 pieces, here's what it looks like. I say 4 pieces because you have 2 pieces of the front, 2 pieces of the lining. So go ahead and place the one piece on the table, which is basically the main fabric, and then the corresponding lining piece on it. You want to make sure the right sides are facing each other, and then you want to start pinning from the hem. You want to pin the entire hem in place, and then mark a sewing allowance of 1/2 inch and sew it in place. Repeat this for the other side as well. After sewing the hem, go ahead to the waist area around the curve part, and then go ahead and pin the fabric to the lining piece while the right sides are still facing each other, literally just as I'm showing you guys now. You want to pin all the way from the waist, following the curve to the hem. While sewing the hem, I recommend that you open up your seams. So as you can see, I spread the hem and the seams wide open, and then I went ahead to pin it in place so it doesn't close up. So I recommend that you do this so that it's not bulky on the inside, and then go ahead and sew on 1/2 inch sewing allowance all the way from the hem to the waist along the curve. Alright guys, so after sewing and ironing, this is what each piece should look like. Basically, I had 2 pieces. You want to go ahead and notch your pieces all the way following the curve, and the essence of doing that is to create ease. Because the fabric is not cut on the bias, having to follow a curve is kind of like an inconvenience. So you need to create that ease by notching it all through. Now you want to go ahead and place them as it should be. Obviously I'm placing on the wrong side just to show you guys, but this is what it looked like. Guys, tell me why I went to mess it up, and I decided that I wanted it to be a bit more open, because I went to go ahead and reduce it. By the way, do not reduce yours except you want it really, really revealing. If you want to show a lot more skin, go ahead and reduce it. Otherwise, disregard this bit, guys. Anyway, like I said, I got really scissors happy, and I went ahead to kind of reduce it just a little bit because I thought it would look nicer. I was wrong. I mean, it's not like it was bad, guys, but it was not for me. A bit too much for me, so I went ahead to fix it right back. But like I said, if you want it a bit more revealing, go ahead and snip it off. Alright guys, just so you know that all the process is like the same, despite the fact that you keep or you don't keep your tulip that shape. If you decide to make it less, it's still going to be the same sewing process. So just ignore that little scissors happy moment that I had. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your dart matches. So you have one dart on, you have either 1 or 2 darts on both pieces depending on how you cut your tulip. You want to make sure that the dart aligns to the other darts. So on this one, I kind of used the dart underneath to trace out where the skirt should be positioned, this other piece should be positioned, and I matched the darts to each other. After matching the darts to each other, I went ahead to pin it in place, and I went ahead to sew it in place by sewing it from one dart point to the other dart point. Now it's important that you don't sew from the side seam because you need that when you're finishing up the skirt. So just sew from one dart point to the other dart point as I showed in this video. At this point, your front piece is ready and your skirt is halfway there. Go ahead and place the back piece on the front piece so that the right sides are facing each other. You want to make sure that the hems match and you want to make sure the waist match. Now, starting from the waist, you want to pick the main fabric only, making sure that they match, and then you want to pin your waist starting from the waist all the way to the hem and then continue all the way to the waist of the lining. So again, you're starting from the waist of the main fabric, you pin so that the right sides are facing each other, and then you pin all the way to the hem where they meet, and then you keep pinning all the way to the lining waist side. After pinning all the way to the lining waist, you want to go ahead and sew it on 1 inch, which is the sewing allowance that you left. So go ahead and sew it all the way from the waist on the main fabric all the way to the waist on the lining. Repeat this on the other side as well. Now that that has been done, you want to go ahead and position your skirt to the right side, turn it inside out, and this is what it should look like.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Alright guys, so at this point I realized that this isn't right for me. So like I said, it's not necessarily a mistake, but it just wasn't right for me. If you like to show a bit more skin, then it'll be absolutely appropriate for you, but for me it was a bit way too much. So I went ahead to fix it and kind of just sew back what I cut off. But if you have some more fabric as well, you can literally just replace the entire piece. Then go ahead and fix your zipper, and as you can see, I used an invisible zipper. If you like a tutorial on how I fixed my invisible zip, let me know in the comment section and I will show you guys. I didn't use any food, so I just used my normal sewing machine and I went ahead to sew it, and I think I did a pretty good job. So at this point, obviously my iron was acting up because I don't know why the skirt is wet. Anyways, let's move on to the band. So we're now at the last part of the skirt, and the last thing to do is to make the band. I thought I would explain to you guys how I fixed the band, but if you like a separate video on that, let me know as well, and I'll be more than happy to do a separate video. The best illustration I have for the band is to draw a rectangle. To determine what you need for the band, I always say that the first thing you need to know is to know how wide you want your band to be. So if you want your band to be 2 inches, then you imagine that you want one side of it to be 2 inches, and then obviously because it bends over, it will have to bend over to the other side, and that's another 2 inches, making a total of 4 inches. Now you have to understand that you need to sew it to the skirt, so you need half an inch sewing allowance on one side and half an inch sewing allowance on the other side, which is an extra 1 inch. So for the total width that you need is going to be the desired band height times 2 plus 1 inch. And then for your total length, that's kind of straightforward. You need your waist measurement, and then you need half an inch sewing allowance on both edges, which is kind of what I've just indicated. And then you need an extra 1 inch that I'm painting in red. This 1 inch in red is for your hook allowance. You know, you have to put a hook on your skirt. So at the end of the day, you need your waist measurement plus 2 inches. So I've gone ahead to create a clearer explanation. So just follow the explanation and you should be able to calculate, what you need for your band fabric using this measurement. Alright guys, so going by the calculation on the screen, I initially wanted my desired bandwidth to be 2 inches, but then again I thought about it and I went with a bandwidth of 1.5 inches. So 1.5 inches multiplied by 2 would give me 3, and then I add an extra 1 inch allowance, which came up to 4. So that's what I ended up going with 4. I wanted to go with like a bandwidth of 2 before, which would have given me 2 times 2, 4, and then 1, which would have given me 5. But like I said, I changed my mind and I went with the bandwidth of 1.5, which gave me a total of 4 for the width I'll be cutting out. So go ahead and cut that out once you determine what you need. The next thing to decide again is the band length, and again we're going to be using the same calculation that was on the screen earlier. For the length you need waist measurement plus 2 inches, and in my case my waist measurement is 82 centimeters. Now I know that for some people it's confusing converting from centimeters to inches, but it's a waist measurement plus 2 inches. That's what you need. So go ahead and watch my video on how to convert measurements if you haven't, and that would show you how to convert. So I went ahead to cut out my desired band width, and you have to remember that my fabric is on fold, so I know it looks small, but again it's folded here. After cutting out the desired fabric for the band, go ahead and open it up, and the next thing you want to do is mark the wrong sides and the right side. So you basically just want to mark one side, whether it's the wrong side, so that you know, okay, this is the wrong side of my fabric. Next, you want to fold it into 2 and then sew the edges on half an inch sewing allowance on each side. After sewing the edges, this is what it looks like. Go ahead and turn it to the right side, and you want to push out all corners so that it's nice and crisp. After pushing out the corners, this is what your band looks like. Now to fix your band onto your skirt, you want to unzip your skirt, and then you want to start from one edge of the zipper and pin your band onto the inside. That's the side with the lining. Starting from the edge of the zipper, pin it all the way around. You pin the band to the insides of the skirt or to the lining of the skirt. When you get to the edge, you should have 1 inch skirt hook allowance sticking out. Go ahead and sew it to the band on half an inch sewing allowance. After sewing the band to the skirt, the next thing to do is to fold the band over and top stitch onto the right side of the skirt. This is what it looks like after top stitching. You basically want to fold it in and just make sure that you sew nice even seams. After top stitching, this is the result you should get. At this point, your skirt is almost ready and you want to go ahead and sew your hook and eye to it. But at the moment, I wouldn't be doing the hook and eye. I'll literally just hold it in place with a pin. And this is what the skirt looks like. Go ahead and give it a good iron to finish up your skirt. And at this point you are finished. Well done guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching this video to the very end. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to leave your comments, suggestions and feedback in the comment section below. Thank you, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.